This recording captures the Jarretttown Community Information Session held on Wednesday, January 28th, open to the public. These sessions were led by Upper Dublin School District Superintendent Dr. Lori Smith and Chief Financial Officer Andrew Leckman to review the proposed exterior and interior site plans for the Jarretttown Elementary project, as well as to present the project's financial planning. Director of Facilities Robert Lester and representatives from ICS Construction Management and Alloy 5 Architecture also supported the presentation. Each of the 4 sessions concluded with a question and answer period for participants.
So hopefully between all of us, if you have questions, we'll be able to answer them. We have just a short agenda, give you a little bit of background how we got to where we are. We'll talk about the current site plan, we'll look at the current floor plans and budget, and then end with just some district communications on how you can stay in tune. So just to give you some background, we have been looking at Jarretttown more specifically for over a year now. Started some of that back in June of 2024. ICS, along with Mr. Lester and Mr. Leckman, annually do a capital plan. They present that at Finance Committee, I believe, in every December. It's a 5-year plan. So as we've seen the needs here at Jarretttown escalate, we've been looking at that and keeping an eye on it. We have lots of building systems that are at their end of life here in Jarretttown, and if you think about replacing the HVAC or so forth in your home, we know that those are large expenses, and so we started to think about, are they appropriate to put into the existing building, or should we be considering something else? We know that we'll also have an increase in the number of students based upon our demographic study, so we have some capacity issues. And then we also looked at our educational program, and clearly this building was built back in the 50s. It's not been designed for modern education, and so we started to think about the limited flexibility that we have and so forth in terms of our educational program. So those are some of the needs that we identified. So you can kind of see a timeline then over the last year of the things that we've been doing. We've been continuing to assess the needs. We've been talking with various stakeholders, with different user groups that use the space, and that might use the space in the future. We've had community events. We've held tours of this building for the community to be able to see it, done a financial evaluation, and then ultimately looked at 6 different options and got to the point of making a recommendation. You go to the next slide. So we did consider 6 different options, all the way from basic renovations through more type of renovations. You can see we had 2 options here for partial demolition and renovations, and then we had 2 options for a complete brand new building at different sizes of the square footage. On the left, we have some of the criteria that we were looking for, that we set when we started to look at the options to then see which of these options would best meet our needs. And we had an estimated financial amount that would go with each of those. So ultimately, we recommended on the next slide, after careful consideration and kind of narrowing down and ruling out some of those options, we really got between a partial demo renovation and the smaller of the 2 options for a new build, which was option 4. And here we have some of the reasons why we felt like the 84,000 square foot building could meet our educational programming and would be adequate size, as well as be comparable to our other 3 existing elementary schools. Through our financial analysis, we felt it was financially feasible. Mr. Leckman will talk about that in a little bit. And one that was really important for me as we picked between a demo and renovation as well as a new build was the disruption that would be to the students in the building if we were doing any type of demolition and renovation of the building. This building's layout of it is pretty much a big L, and so we would be cutting off particular areas and shifting students quite often. We would have had several phases in order to be able to do that. So this option gives us the least disruption to students.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the design work that we've started doing, right? So in June, we recommended option 4 to our board. That's when we really started to reach out and work with our professionals on the design of this project. So what you see here is the current site as it exists today, and all of the design elements, or all the site elements of our current site, right? So one of the things as we talked about this project was our goals were utilize this building as it exists while we go through the build of a new building. So we needed this building to be fully operational. We also heard a lot from our board, community, administration around the green and the trees around the site, and making sure as we figure out how to do that, how we minimize the impact of those areas. So that's what we were really focused on as we started the detail of the design here. So in the concept, what our professionals did was they looked at the site as it exists today, and they tried to figure out how we could make this project work, right? So the areas in A are what they defined as areas where we believed we can build the new building, right? So one of the challenges around this site as it exists is this building really kind of stretches across the center of this site. So there was limited space on either side to make it work, but it was something that we did figure out. The B and C was we need a minimum of a 50-foot setback from the building to make sure there's safe areas for our students, for our staff, and anyone coming to the building. So that's why that area around the building is kind of lined out. And then area D were areas where were potential for us to build, but we really wanted to limit the impact of those areas just to maintain as much of those tree areas as we possibly could. So then what that led to was this concept design. So what you have here is this is the new building here. This area in red is the existing building, so you can kind of understand how they lay out on the site. And really one of the reasons we ended up with a two-story building, which you'll hear more about and how that's laid out, was two-story building really minimizes the footprint of the building on the site so we can accomplish all of our project goals. Right, some other key things about this design and how it laid out is, if you know, there's a walkway now off of Kenmare Drive. So a lot of our students come in from our walkers behind the building, come in from Kenmare Drive, so that will stay both during construction and after construction. This playground here is another example of one of the things we're really working on in the phasing plan of the project. So very early on in the project, as it's starting to lay out, the playground that sits back here on the site is going to be demoed because that's really where a lot of the work will begin back there, lay down site parking for contractors. But what we're working on is very early on is installing that playground. So the playground out front remains for the primary grades. That'll be accessible through the entire project. And then this new playground will go in so our older students that utilize this playground in fact still have a place to access playground facilities. A couple other things to note here, the fields on the site. So right now we have 3 fields on this site. After the project is complete, we will have 2 fields on this site. Just the way it laid out, we needed to scale that back. The way we're working through that is we have 2 fields at Maple Glen Elementary School right now that are not used at all. They're not maintained. So as part of this project, we'll lose those fields early on. We are going to make sure the fields at Maple Glen get up and running and are accessible. They are mainly our community groups that use those fields. So we'll go from 3 down to 2 at Maple Glen. Then when this project is complete, we will still have the 2 at Maple Glen or 2 on this site. So essentially we will be going from 3 fields to 4 fields, usable fields at the end of the project. Some other things I'll mention here. So this again, I noted that we are really trying to make sure we can limit the impact to our trees on this site. So what our professionals did when they gave us this picture here was they really tried to zone in or zoom in on the current building and how that's going to sit back in that site there. And you can see that while it's not 0, it's really a minimal impact of what we're trying to have taken out back there. I think early on there was some misunderstanding in the community that maybe we were trying to remove this whole area of tree. That was never the intent, and certainly what we are really trying to minimize here. We are also, at this point, we're working through the site and the building design. We still have work to do and have not been through like a landscape design on the project, right? So as we figure out how many trees are impacted through this project, we're going to work with our professionals to really build a design around landscaping, but we're not quite there in the project yet. So we'll do that as we move through the project here. So on this slide then, we as a school district are required to go through all of or follow all the township requirements as it goes through with major projects and construction. So we do need to go through their land development process. We've already started that process with them. This is kind of the detail of that application that we submitted to the township, the detail of the site. Couple things to note here. One, we do not have any zoning variances that are required as part of this process, so we don't expect that to go through the zoning process, but we are still required to go through the land development process. On the details here, a couple things to note. If you're familiar with the site now, there are three ways to get in and out of the site now, right? So there's three different spaces. That will be consolidated to two, and that will really be broken apart between kind of general access to the site and parent drop-off will happen on this side, and then the bus access. So buses in and out will utilize this bus loop. So it's really important for us to keep those two things separate, parent drop-off and general access versus bus drop-off. The other thing that'll happen is this side will also be utilized for overflow parking for like events here at the building. So this will be your main parking lot, and then this on evenings or weekend events would be able to be utilized for overflow parking. Playground here, so that's important. The number of cars that are able to stack up. So one of the things we've been working through, parent drop-off and pickup is a challenge at every one of our buildings. So right now on this site, we are able to have 46 parent cars stack up to pick up and drop off. This new design has an equal amount, 46 to pick up and drop off. What this new design creates efficiency around is, if you're familiar with the current site, we can only really get 3 cars that are able to load and unload at any given time, best case scenario. This new site plan allows us to be able to unload and load about 15 cars at any given time, because there'll be sidewalk there that the cars will be able to pull up to. So that process we are anticipating being much more efficient than it is today, which gives us a leg up on the design of this building. And this room here, the other thing I'll mention is the library here. So one of the cool concepts of the design here from our professionals, our architect, was the concept to at least consider utilizing this room here as an outdoor classroom, right? So this is kind of one of those rooms that I think everyone can point to and say, we love this room, we'd love to be able to do something. So we are very much considering this potentially being an outdoor classroom opened up. A couple considerations that we are still working through, right? You don't notice it because it's enclosed, but Limetown is very close in proximity to this room. So that's something from a student safety standpoint we really have to think through a little more. And just I think in proximity to the building, this will be quite a distance from where the new building will be. So we have to figure out how much that will get used. So there is a cost component to this as well.
Mr. Leckman, I was just going to ask, because I know we have some of our really close neighbors in the room. Would you mind pointing out where like loading dock, dumpsters, like those, that kind of like daily operations noise and movement might be?
Yeah, so this side is primarily buses, but this side also will be the loading zone is back here. So you have your cafeteria that's back here. This is loading and dumpsters back here. And any deliveries would come to the back of the building back here as well.
Thanks. So then this is kind of the first look we did present at our finance committee, but this is really the first look publicly if you didn't come to finance on what the inside of the building looks like. And we are an educational organization, so this is really, while all the other things are important and we need to get placement right, for those of us as educators, this is the exciting part of what does the actual inside and how we're delivering our program. So I'll point out a couple of things. I mentioned already, it is a 2-story building. K1 and 2 would be on the first floor, 3, 4, 5 would be on the second floor of the building. And I'll talk about, when we look at the second floor, what our kindergarten, first and second graders might go upstairs for. We've color-coded everything to hopefully make it relatively easy. Anything that is light blue is considered a general education classroom. We've designed the building to have 4 sections of each grade. Jarretttown currently fluctuates between 3 and 4 sections in a grade right now. We know that we're looking for that growth, so we've designed for 4. We also have designed spaces that in the future, should we have additional growth, can be converted to classrooms. So we're trying to think about the future as well. The darker blue is what we're calling breakout spaces. Those are spaces where small group instruction can happen, a reading specialist, a English language development teacher. We also have larger group instruction spaces where 2, 3, 4 classes can come together, let's say for a guest speaker, a professional development can happen, where it can be much more of a flexible space that can be used, or collaboration type areas. The purple areas are special education classrooms. We've designed the building for the number of programs that we currently have here in Jarretttown, but also for the potential for future additional classroom as we see that population growing here in the district. We've also been very purposeful to think about, for example, in this current building, we might need to share a space between occupational therapy and physical therapy, or took a space and made it a sensory room where we're now able to think proactively and design the spaces so that they are in proximity to the special education classroom and designed for that function. The yellow space is our common space, so that's where you see the cafeteria. This is the front of the building below the design here, so that's where the 2 parking lots are at. We would be staging students for drop-off and pickup in the cafeteria area. So you can see that here at the front of the building. The orange spaces are for our encores. That's our physical education, music, art, and library. The library is here at the back of the building. You can see that space off of there. We have an instrumental music room where we can have like full group instruction. We have a small group instruction for smaller lessons, like 6 or 8 students in there. We do have a full stage attached to the gymnasium here. That can also be a classroom environment if needed. And then you can see that we have our gymnasium here. The gym, to give you a little bit of context, is about double the size of the current gym that we have here. It is not as large as the Maple Glen Gymnasium, but it is significantly larger than Thomas Fitz and Fort Washington gyms are. We have the ability to partition the gym off so that half of it could continue to be used for physical education, while the other half could hold an assembly or a large group, something could be going on over there, which we currently don't have that flexibility in this current building. The brown areas is really the administration area where you enter. It's a secure vestibule. We have our nurse, psychologist, principal, everything that goes with the main office is in that particular area. And then lastly, anything that's in gray is more of like a, what do we call it, your building support. It's your mechanical spaces, your custodial, your maintenance areas, storage space, bathrooms, those types of things that are built in throughout the building. So that's the first floor. And then the second floor looks pretty similar for grades 3, 4, 5, except we don't have that community space on the side where the gym and the cafeteria are. The differences that you'll notice up here, stairs, which actually I think this design changed a little bit from these pictures. We've got some stairs right in here. They'll come up and be able to go to those 2 rooms and then go back down. So trying to keep less travel for them upstairs. But otherwise it looks pretty comparable to what the downstairs look like. So that's the exciting part of it.
So Dr. Smith mentioned that the designs change, right? So what you're hearing tonight is really where we were at as part of our schematic design phase of the project. Projects go through multiple phases to get to the end or a bid-ready project, right? Schematic design simply means that we're about, at that point, 30% through the design of the project. We are in the design development phase of the project right now, which means once we finish that, we'd be about 60%. So we're in that 30 to 60% range right now. And you can see that'll be done in the next couple of months, and that'll move us into construction documents as well and getting ready to approve a project. We are also currently, they move along at the same point in some cases. We're working through permits and approvals, both with the township, and we have other permits and approvals outside the township scope that we need to get. That process can take about 12 months to get through. So we are currently working through that as well, and ultimately to get to by about next January is when we would be looking to make a recommendation to our board about a final project and approving bids and approving contractor contracts as well. So we've got about a year until we get there, and if everything goes as planned, we'd be looking at around next January to March timeframe to really break ground and get this project started. Once the project breaks ground and gets started, we have about 2.5 years to build the building is about how long it'll take us. And then once we build the building, you can see the green area out there in the future would be demo and site work. So if the building is, assuming the building's built, we open it in September of 2029 for the 29-30 school year. Then we would demo this building. We have lots of site work to do, parking lots, fields, grading, all of that site work that'll still need to happen, and that'll take about 6 to 9 months even after the project to get through all that. So our project budget, when we approved or recommended this project to our board back in June, our recommendation was an 84,000 square foot concept, and the cost of that, the budget for that was estimated to be about $60 million. Okay, so since that time, we've been continually working on design of the project, and you can see here, as a schematic design, what you saw tonight, we were about 85, a little over 85,000 square foot. And then kind of where we were at the last time we talked about this publicly was just under 88,000 square feet. So you can see as we go through the design process, this building has grown a little bit. Some of the work we'll need to do now over the next half of the design phase will be to figure out, is there a way to scale that back to 84,000, which was the original concept, or are these really needs? So we'll do some value engineering, we'll look at what's possible, and we'll look to scale that back. But as of the schematic design, it was still $60 million estimate. And again, we get a full update from our professionals kind of every one of those major checkpoints as we go through the process. So when we finish design development, we'll get another full budget update here. So what that means from, as you think about $60 million, that's a lot of money. How are we paying for that, right? So there's a lot of words on this slide, and you can certainly read them while I'm talking here. But we have, as a district, we have a couple different buckets of funds that we talk about when we talk about how we afford to operate and then pay for capital projects. We have a general fund, which is really our operational fund, and it's the budget that the board approves every single year. And when we think about what our total budget is, we have about $125 million budget to operate on an annual basis. We then also have a capital reserve fund, right? So every year we've been able to put money aside into this capital reserve fund, and it's for a number of different things. For large capital projects for our facilities, we have about $350 million in district facilities that need to be kept up over time. So we set money aside into that capital reserve fund. We have $15 million in that fund that we are going to utilize cash to pay for this project. So we have a $60 million project. We have $15 million in capital reserve that we're going to allocate towards this project, which means we have about $45 million left. That $45 million then will be financed through issuance of bonds, and we'll go out to market and issue bonds with a 25-year payback. And what that ultimately means is about $3 million a year in debt service that will then be paid by our general fund. So that's where we have a $125 million budget, and we'll have about $3 million then that we'll have to pay debt service back every year. We've recommended to our board as part of the financing for this project is, without getting too far into the details of our budget, you can check that out at our finance committee meeting. The Act 1 index, if you're not familiar, kind of caps what a school district is able to raise taxes on an annual basis. So we've committed, or we've estimated that we can fund this project within the confines of the Act 1 index. So if you think back, if you were here when the high school project was approved, that project was approved via referendum, and it required voter referendum because the district required in excess of the Act 1 index to fund that project. Sandy Run, as an example, was a project that was not needed tax increases beyond the Act 1 index, so it did not require voter referendum. This project is much more similar to the Sandy Run project. So we've been working very hard with if you met her on your way in, our district communications director. Oh, she's in the room now. Okay, thank you. We've been working very hard, and Mrs. Yoder has been working extremely hard to make sure we as a district are communicating with our community on a regular basis about what's going on. This is a project that we've been working very hard to get information out around. If you're not familiar with our website, please go there, check it out. It's been a lot of great work done on the website. There is a page on there for the Jarretttown project. It's kept up to date as we have updates to give there, so please check that out. Newsletters, news from the nest. If you're not signed up for these things, please check them out. It's a great way to get information about what's going on in the district, to stay up to date on everything that's going on, not just Jarretttown, great things that's happening in our classrooms. We've been working hard to target messages to Jarretttown families to keep them up to date on what's going on, and also I think with our neighbors, our property neighbors as well. So we had an early meeting with them a little while ago to let them know what was going on. And then sessions like this, just to keep everyone updated. Our board finance committee is the committee that does all the work on these types of projects. So definitely if you're interested in keeping up all these items, but you can certainly get regular updates at the finance committee on everything that's going on.
So as Mr. Lechman mentioned, we are still kind of somewhat early in this process. There's a lot of details and things to figure out, but we'll continue to work on that. We'll continue to keep the community updated. But we really appreciate you coming tonight, learning a little bit, And I'll turn it over now to the group. If you have questions, hopefully one of us here in the room will be able to answer that for you.
We appreciate those who joined us for this Jarretttown Community Information Session. We value our community's engagement and invite you to visit udsd.org/JTES-plan to learn more and follow future updates.